The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor 3 inches from my foot, spraying champagne across my navy dress like poisoned rain. Around me, 30 faces turned in perfect synchronization, their conversations dying mid-sentence as my daughter-in-law Claire stood at the center of the living room, her perfectly manicured hand still extended from the throw, her smile sharp as broken glass. Good day, everyone. I am grateful you are here with me. Before we begin, I would really love to know where you are watching from. Comment your city below. Now, let me tell you about something that changed my life forever. I watched the champagne seep into the Persian rug my late husband Robert had brought back from Tehran 30 years ago. My hands remained steady at my sides, though every muscle in my body coiled tight. The anniversary party for my son continued around us, but the air had shifted, become electric with anticipation. Claire's voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. I'm so sorry, everyone. Mother Evelyn gets confused sometimes. The words landed soft, concerned, wrapped in false honey. I lifted my gaze from the shattered crystal to her face. She wore that expression I'd seen her practice in mirrors, eyebrows drawn together just right, lips pursed in manufactured worry. Behind her, my son Thomas shifted his weight, his jaw working but producing no sound. I bent down, my knees protesting the movement, and picked up a shard of glass. The sharp edge pressed against my thumb without breaking skin. Around the room, guests exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others hungry for drama to season their evening. My sister-in-law Janet set down her plate with deliberate care, her eyes narrowed. Mother Evelyn didn't hear me ask her to hold my glass. Claire continued, her voice rising just enough to ensure the back corners of the room caught every syllable. She's been having these little episodes lately. Just last week, she forgot where she parked her car. We found her wandering the parking garage for 2 hours. My fingers tightened around the glass shard. The lie was constructed beautifully, specific enough to sound true, concerned enough to seem loving. I straightened slowly, feeling every one of my 55 years in my spine, and dropped the shard into a nearby plant. Thomas finally moved, taking one step toward his wife, his hand rising in what might have been protest or agreement. I couldn't tell anymore which version of my son lived inside that expensive suit. The boy who'd cried on my shoulder after his first heartbreak had calcified into something harder, more distant. I walked toward the coat closet, my heels clicking against the hardwood with metronomic precision. My purse hung on its designated hook, right where I'd placed it 90 minutes earlier, beside the cream silk scarf I'd bought in Paris last month during a medical conference where I'd delivered the keynote address on cognitive decline in aging populations. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. I pulled my phone from my purse, the screen illuminating faces in the family photos I'd organized into albums just yesterday. My thumb moved across the glass, finding the calendar application with its color-coded schedule, each appointment, each meeting, each commitment logged with precision that would shame a military operation. Tomorrow, board meeting at 8, lunch with the hospital administrator at noon, surgery observation at 3. The closet door swung wider as someone approached from behind. Janet's perfume arrived first, that heavy floral scent she'd worn for 20 years. Don't let her get to you, she whispered, her hand touching my elbow. I slid the phone back into my purse and withdrew my car keys. The Mercedes fob felt solid, real, anchored to verifiable fact. I'd parked in space 17, directly beneath the oak tree, whose branches scraped the third-floor windows. The parking garage story was fiction, but Claire had delivered it with the confidence of a seasoned litigator. Behind us, conversation had resumed, but the quality had changed, voices pitched lower, words carefully selected. I could hear Claire's laugh, bright and performative, followed by the clink of fresh glasses being poured. She was holding court now, cementing her narrative while the audience was still captive. My coat hung beside Thomas's leather jacket. I pulled it down, feeling the weight of the cashmere settle across my shoulders. The fabric still held remnants of cold air from outside, and I breathed it in, letting it sharpen my focus. "Mother, wait." Thomas appeared at the closet's edge, his face arranged into something approximating concern. His tie was loosened now, the knot pulled down an inch. I buttoned my coat slowly, each button sliding through its hole with practiced ease. My hands didn't shake. My fingers found each button on the first attempt. No fumbling, no confusion. "Your wife is very creative," I said, meeting his eyes. He looked away first, his jaw working. "She's just worried about you. We both are." The lie sat between us like a third person. I could see it in the way his shoulders curved inward, protecting something soft underneath the armor. But he didn't contradict me, didn't apologize, didn't defend me to the room full of relatives who were currently digesting his wife's poison along with their appetizers. I pushed past him into the hallway. The grandfather clock near the stairs showed 8:45. I'd arrived at 7:15, had helped set out the cheese board, had discussed Janet's daughter's college applications with clarity and interest. 90 minutes of normal interaction, erased by one well-placed lie. The front door required navigating through the living room again. Claire stood beside the fireplace now, her arm linked through her sister's elbow. Madison. That was the sister's name? She'd arrived from Denver that afternoon. Both women watched me cross the room, their expressions identically arranged into sympathy. "Evelyn, you're not leaving already?" Madison asked, her voice dripping with manufactured concern. I gripped my purse tighter, feeling the leather compress under my fingers. The room had gone quiet again, all conversations suspended to witness my exit. This was what Claire wanted. The dramatic departure, the confused older woman fleeing after being caught in her decline. "I have early rounds tomorrow," I said, keeping my voice level. Claire tilted her head, her smile never wavering. "On Sunday? Mother, tomorrow's Sunday." The words landed like a slap. Around the room, heads turned. My sister-in-law's cousin, Richard, I thought his name was, set down his drink with exaggerated care. I pulled my phone back out, pressed the home button, and held the screen toward Claire. The calendar displayed clearly. Saturday, November 18th. Tomorrow was indeed Sunday. My rounds were scheduled for Monday. The phone trembled in my outstretched hand. Not from weakness, but from the rage building in my chest like steam in a sealed vessel. I watched Claire's eyes flick to the screen, saw the microscopic tightening at the corners of her mouth. Satisfaction, not concern. I lowered the phone slowly, deliberately. My thumb moved across the screen, pulling up my hospital calendar app. The schedule loaded, a color-coded grid of appointments and procedures. Monday morning, 2 consultations, 1 surgery scheduled for 10:30. I turned the phone toward the room again, letting anyone who wanted confirmation see the evidence. "Monday," I said. "My rounds are Monday, as I stated. I said I have early rounds tomorrow because I need to review patient files and prep notes before Monday's schedule." The silence shifted quality, becoming uncomfortable rather than pitying. Janet's husband cleared his throat. Someone in the kitchen turned on the faucet, the rush of water filling the awkward pause. Claire's jaw tightened. She released her sister's arm and stepped forward, reaching for my phone. "Mother, let me see." I pulled it back, snapping it against my chest. The movement was sharp, protective, Years of guarding patient privacy had made certain gestures automatic. My other hand came up, palm out, establishing a boundary that Claire's forward momentum nearly breached. "Don't," I said. The word came out harder than I'd intended, carrying the full weight of authority I used with non-compliant residents. Claire stopped mid-reach, her hand suspended in the air between us. For 3 seconds, we stood frozen in that tableau. Her arm extended, my palm raised, the phone pressed against my collarbone. Then Claire's expression crumbled. Her eyes welled with tears, her lower lip trembling. She turned toward the gathered crowd, her hand dropping to cover her mouth. "You see?" Her voice broke perfectly, each word wrapped in manufactured anguish. "She's becoming aggressive. This is exactly what the doctor warned about." The room erupted in murmurs. Madison rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Claire's shoulders. Janet appeared at my elbow, her hand hovering near my arm without quite touching. "Evelyn, sweetie, maybe you should sit down," Janet said softly. My heart hammered against my ribs. The phone dug into my chest where I still clutched it. Every face in the room regarded me with some variation of concern or alarm, except Claire's, whose eyes met mine over Madison's shoulder with unmistakable triumph. I forced my breathing to slow, to deepen. The technique I taught medical students during their first trauma rotation: control your physical response. Control the situation. My shoulders lowered. My grip on the phone loosened. When I spoke, I modulated my voice to professional neutrality. "I haven't seen any doctor about cognitive decline," I said, addressing the room rather than Claire. "I haven't been diagnosed with anything. I've made no errors at work." My department head conducted my annual review 3 weeks ago and recommended me for the Surgical Excellence Committee. Richard shifted his weight, glancing between Claire and me. "Maybe there's been some misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Claire interjected, extracting herself from Madison's embrace. She moved to the coffee table, snatched up her own phone, and began scrolling with theatrical urgency. "I have the medical documentation right here. The diagnosis, the prognosis, everything." She thrust her phone toward the crowd. People leaned in, squinting at the screen. I watched their faces as they read whatever Claire had fabricated, watched doubt creep into their expressions, watched them reassess me through this new, poisoned lens. My feet carried me forward before conscious thought directed them. 3 steps brought me close enough to see Claire's screen. The document displayed there showed a medical letterhead I didn't recognize, a clinic I'd never visited, a doctor whose name I'd never heard. Dr. Patricia Vance, the header read. Neurological Associates of Portland. The text below detailed progressive cognitive impairment, recommended lifestyle modifications, suggestions for family intervention. The patient name at the top, Evelyn Marie Lewis. My full name, including the middle name I rarely used. My vision narrowed to that screen, to those damning fabricated words. The edges of my sight went dark, tunneling. Blood rushed in my ears, drowning out the murmured conversations around me. "This is forged," I said. My voice sounded distant, hollow. Claire pulled the phone back protectively. "Mother, denial is a common symptom." "Show me the document information." I reached for her phone. The metadata, the actual file. She stepped backward, clutching the device against her chest now, mirroring my earlier defensive posture. "I'm not letting you delete it." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Around us, the party guests shifted uneasily. Someone coughed. Madison's expression flickered, with what might have been doubt, but she moved closer to her sister nonetheless. I pulled my car keys from my purse. the metal jangling sharply in the quiet room. My hands had stopped shaking. The rage had crystallized into something colder, more useful. I'd spent 30 years navigating hospital politics, departmental rivalry, insurance fraud attempts. This was just another battle, another opponent. "Email me that document," I said to Claire. "Tonight, I'll have my attorney review it Monday morning." Her face paled slightly. "Your attorney?" "Send it to my personal email, the address you've had for 10 years. I turned toward Janet, who still hovered nearby. "Thank you for hosting. I'm sorry the evening ended this way." Janet's mouth opened, closed. Her hands fluttered helplessly. "Evelyn, I'm sure we can—" But I was already moving toward the door, my footsteps steady on the hardwood floor. Behind me, Claire's voice rose in pitch. "Running away won't change your condition, Mother. We're trying to help you." I reached the front door, gripped the handle. The metal was cool under my palm, solid, real. Without turning around, I spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "File the document with Adult Protective Services if you genuinely believe I'm impaired. They'll order an independent evaluation. Until then, don't contact me." The door swung open. Cold November air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and wet pavement. I stepped into the darkness without looking back. The drive home blurred past streetlights and rain-slicked roads. My headlights cut through sheets of water, hammering the windshield. The wipers scraped rhythmically, a metronome counting seconds I couldn't get back. My knuckles ached from gripping the steering wheel, white against the black leather. I pulled into my driveway at 9:47 p.m. according to the dashboard clock. The house stood dark, except for the porch light I'd left burning. Rain drummed on the car roof while I sat motionless, watching water stream down the windows. My chest felt tight, compressed by something heavier than anger. The garage door opener clicked when I pressed it. The familiar grinding sound usually comforted me. Tonight, it just reminded me how quiet the house would be inside. No grandchildren's laughter, no family dinners. Claire had taken those away with her lies. Inside, I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter and moved through rooms, turning on every light. The sudden brightness made me squint, but darkness felt dangerous now. Darkness meant time to think, time to feel the full weight of what had happened. My hands were steady as I filled the kettle. Water rushed from the tap, splashing against stainless steel. I measured tea leaves into the infuser with practiced precision. Exactly 1.5 teaspoons, just as I'd done every night for 20 years. The routine steadied me more than the actual tea would. While waiting for the water to boil, I pulled my laptop from my office. The screen's blue glow illuminated the kitchen table as it powered on. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Claire hadn't sent the document yet, but I needed to prepare anyway. I opened my email and began a new message to my attorney, Roger Pemberton. We'd worked together on medical malpractice cases before my retirement. His fees were astronomical, but his reputation was worth every penny. The kettle whistled. I poured water over the tea leaves, watching them swirl and unfurl in the heated liquid. Steam rose in delicate spirals, carrying the scent of chamomile and lavender. I'd always found the ritual soothing, but tonight my jaw remained clenched. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a text from an unknown number. I picked it up, my thumb swiping to unlock it. "This is Denise Harper, Janet's youngest. I was in the kitchen during most of the dinner. Mom doesn't know I'm texting. Claire has been planning this for weeks. She told Mom you're losing it and needs an intervention. I don't believe her, just thought you should know." I read the message 3 times. My pulse quickened. Janet's daughter. I'd barely noticed her tonight. Hadn't even realized she was there. But she'd been watching, listening, collecting evidence while Claire built her case. I typed back quickly. "Thank you. Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Yes, I have recordings." My breath caught. Recordings. I set the phone down carefully on the table, as if it might explode. The tea had steeped too long now, probably bitter, but I drank it anyway. The heat burned my tongue, a sharp reminder that I could still feel things beyond betrayal and rage. I returned to the email draft. My fingers flew across the keyboard, laying out the evening's events in clinical detail. Dates, times, exact quotes I could remember. The falsified document Claire claimed to have, her public accusations, the witnesses present, my years of professional service, my recent physical and cognitive health screenings, all excellent. At 11:23 p.m., I hit send. Roger wouldn't see it until Monday, but having it written and dispatched lifted some weight from my shoulders. The house phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence. I stared at it. The caller ID showed Marcus's cell number. My son. Claire's husband. My hands trembled as I reached for the receiver, then stopped. The ringing continued. 4 times. 5. The answering machine clicked on. "Mom, it's Marcus. Please pick up." His voice sounded strained, urgent. "I just got home from my shift. Claire told me what happened. I need to hear your side. This doesn't—" A pause, shuffling sounds. Claire's voice in the background sharp and insistent. Then the line went dead. I stood frozen, hand still hovering over the phone. Marcus had tried to call. That meant something. But Claire had stopped him. She'd physically prevented him from talking to me. My own son. The anger I'd carefully controlled flared white-hot. I grabbed my car keys from the counter. The rational part of my brain screamed that driving to their house at midnight would play into Claire's narrative. The unstable mother-in-law, acting erratically. But my feet were already moving toward the garage. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from Denise. "Don't go to their house tonight. That's what she's expecting. She'll call the police, say you're having an episode. Stay home. Fight this the right way." I stopped in the doorway, keys biting into my palm. The garage yawned dark and empty ahead of me. Rain continued pounding on the roof. I released my grip on the keys, watching them fall to the kitchen counter with a metallic clatter. The rage still burned in my chest. But Denise was right. Showing up at their house in this state would give Claire exactly the ammunition she wanted. Instead, I pulled open the junk drawer, digging through takeout menus and old receipts until my fingers found the small black device tucked in the back. The digital recorder I'd used for work presentations years ago. The battery indicator glowed green when I pressed the power button. Tomorrow, I would record every conversation, document everything. Sleep came in fragments. I jolted awake at 3, then 4:30, then finally gave up at 5:47 and made coffee. The storm had passed, leaving the morning gray and dripping. I showered, dressed in my navy pantsuit, the one I'd worn to board meetings, and applied makeup with steady hands. If people wanted to question my mental state, they'd have to face someone who looked completely in control. The doorbell rang at 8:15. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her 30s with a laminated ID badge clipped to her blazer. My stomach dropped. "Mrs. Lewis, I'm Patricia Chen from Adult Protective Services." Her voice carried through the door, professionally neutral. "I need to speak with you about a welfare concern that was filed yesterday." I pressed my forehead against the doorframe, eyes closed. Claire had escalated. She'd actually called APS and reported me as a vulnerable adult. The audacity burned through me like acid. But I opened the door. Hiding would only confirm their suspicions. Patricia stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanning the living room. I watched her take in the organized bookshelves, the clean surfaces, the stack of bills neatly arranged on the side table. Her expression remained neutral, but I caught the slight relaxation in her shoulders. "Thank you for letting me in." She pulled out a tablet. "This shouldn't take long. I just need to ask some standard questions." The questions were humiliating. Could I manage my own finances? Did I know today's date? Had I been forgetting to take medications? I answered each one clearly, mechanically, while my hands gripped the armrests of my chair hard enough to hurt. Patricia made notes. "I'm required to ask, have you been experiencing any confusion lately? Memory problems?" "No." The word came out clipped. "My daughter-in-law is upset because I reported a legitimate safety concern about my granddaughter. This is retaliation." Something flickered across Patricia's face. She'd heard this story before, family members weaponizing the system against each other. She set down her tablet and looked at me directly, really looked, for the first time. "Mrs. Lewis, I need to be frank. Nothing I've observed suggests you require intervention." She paused. "But the person who filed the report provided specific incidents. They claimed you've been making accusations, sending threatening messages, and showing signs of paranoid behavior." My jaw clenched. Claire had painted me as the aggressor. "May I see the report?" Patricia hesitated, then turned the tablet toward me. There it was, in Claire's careful handwriting, transcribed into the digital form. She'd documented my text messages about Sophia's bruises, twisted to sound like obsessive delusions. She'd included the letter I'd sent to the school, characterizing it as harassment. And she'd added a new claim that I'd driven to their house at midnight in an agitated state and attempted to force my way inside. That last part was a complete fabrication. I'd never left my house. "This is a lie." I pointed to the screen, my finger shaking. "I was home all night. My neighbor called me. I have phone records." Patricia pulled the tablet back. "I'm just here to assess your current situation. You clearly don't meet the criteria for intervention." She stood, gathering her things. "But I'd recommend documenting everything. If there's a custody concern about your granddaughter, that's a separate legal matter." After she left, I sat motionless in the living room. The digital recorder sat on the coffee table where I'd placed it before answering the door, its red light dark. I'd forgotten to turn it on. The sound of a car door slamming outside made me stand. Through the window, I saw Marcus climbing out of his truck. He looked exhausted, still wearing his paramedic uniform from the night shift. He walked up to the porch with his head down, hands shoved in his pockets. I opened the door before he could knock. We stared at each other. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw tight. He looked like he hadn't slept either. "She told me not to come." His voice cracked slightly. "But you're still my mother." Something in my chest loosened. I stepped back to let him enter. Marcus moved past me into the living room, his boots heavy on the hardwood floor. He stopped at the coffee table, his eyes scanning the papers I'd spread across its surface. The printed emails, the school letter, the psychiatric evaluation document. His shoulders tensed visibly as he picked up the top sheet. I closed the front door quietly and stood with my back against it, watching him. His hand trembled as he read. The muscles in his jaw worked, grinding his teeth the way he'd done since childhood when something upset him. A vein pulsed at his temple. "She said you were having episodes." His voice came out strangled. "That you weren't remembering conversations. That you'd been aggressive with Emma." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. I pressed my palms flat against the door to steady myself. Did you believe her? He dropped the paper back onto the table. His hand went to his face, rubbing hard at his eyes. When he looked at me again, tears had gathered at the corners. I didn't know what to believe anymore. His voice broke completely. You seemed fine when I saw you, but then she'd show me things. Text messages you supposedly sent. Voice recordings. My stomach contracted violently. What recordings? Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. His fingers moved across the screen, then he turned it toward me. He pressed play. My own voice came through the speaker, slurred and confused. Marcus? Marcus, where are you? They're trying to get in. Can you hear them? They're in the walls. The voice dissolved into sobbing. Please come home. I'm so scared. They won't stop knocking. Ice flooded through my veins. My legs weakened, and I slid down the door until I sat on the floor. The voice was mine. The inflection, the timbre. But I'd never said those words. Never made that call. When was that supposed to be from? Last Thursday, 2:30 in the morning. Marcus crouched down, bringing himself to my level. Mom, if you're having night episodes where you don't remember, I never called you. My voice came out stronger than I felt. Check your actual phone records, your call log, not just a recording she played for you. He stared at me for a long moment, then pulled up his call history. I watched his face as he scrolled, his expression shifting from concern to confusion. His thumb moved faster, going back through days of records. There's nothing here from you that night? He looked up. Nothing at 2:30. Nothing at all after that Tuesday when you called about Emma's school project. Because I didn't call. I pulled myself back up, using the door handle for leverage. Denise created that recording somehow? She's been manufacturing evidence. Marcus stood abruptly, his phone clattering to the floor. He walked to the window, his back rigid. His hands gripped the window frame, knuckles white. I could see his chest heaving with rapid breaths. Why would she do this? The question came out barely above a whisper. Why would she want everyone to think you're... He couldn't finish the sentence. The word hung between us anyway. Senile. Crazy. Dangerous. I moved to the couch and sat carefully, my body still shaking from the adrenaline. I don't know, but she's been systematic about it. The school complaint, the welfare check, now manipulated audio. She's building a case. Marcus turned from the window. His face had changed, the exhaustion replaced by something harder. He picked up his phone from where it had fallen, then grabbed the papers from the coffee table. He photographed each one methodically, the camera shutter clicking rapidly. I need to go home. He moved toward the door, then stopped. Don't call me for the next few days. Don't text. Don't come to the house. My throat constricted. Marcus, I need her to think I still believe her. He looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. If she knows I'm questioning this, she'll escalate. I've seen it happen before, with her sister. The lawsuits, the restraining orders. He grabbed the doorknob, his hand shaking. Give me time to document things on my end. The door closed behind him before I could respond. Through the window, I watched him sit in his truck for several minutes, his head bowed over the steering wheel. His shoulders shook. Then he started the engine and pulled away. I returned to the coffee table and noticed something I'd missed before. A small envelope tucked under the scattered papers. My name was written across it in Emma's careful handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a crayon drawing of 3 figures holding hands. The labels underneath read Grandma, Me and Dad in purple marker. In the corner, Emma had written in pencil, so small I almost missed it. Mom says I can't see you anymore. The paper crumpled in my grip as my hands contracted involuntarily. A sound escaped my throat, something between a sob and a gasp. I pressed my fist against my mouth to contain it. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, an unknown number. I stared at it through 2 more rings before answering. Mrs. Lewis? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. This is Carol Brennan from Child Protective Services. I need to schedule a home visit regarding allegations that have been filed concerning your granddaughter, Emma Lewis. The phone nearly slipped from my grip. I caught it against my chest, pressing it there as my heart hammered beneath my palm. Sweat broke out along my hairline despite the air conditioning running at full blast. What allegations? My voice came out hoarse, cracking on the second word. I can't discuss specifics over the phone. We've received a complaint regarding potential endangerment during unsupervised visits. I have an opening Thursday at 2 o'clock. I gripped the edge of the coffee table, feeling the wood grain dig into my palm. The room tilted slightly, my vision narrowing at the edges. I forced myself to breathe through my nose, counting to 4 the way my doctor had shown me. I need to know what I'm being accused of. Thursday at 2. Please have documentation ready, medical records, any witnesses who can speak to your caregiving abilities, and a list of medications you're currently taking. Papers rustled on her end. The address we have on file is 2847 Oakwood Drive, correct? I confirmed it. The call ended before I could ask anything else. My legs gave out. I sank onto the couch, Emma's drawing still clutched in my other hand. The purple marker bled slightly where my thumb pressed against it. I set it down carefully on the coffee table, smoothing out the wrinkles my grip had created. The medications. Denise must have told them about the pill organizer, twisted it into evidence of memory problems. My hands shook as I pulled my prescription bottles from my purse, lining them up on the table. Blood pressure medication, cholesterol, vitamin D. Nothing that would impair my judgment or ability to care for Emma. I photographed each bottle with my phone, then opened the Notes app and began typing everything I could remember about my visits with Emma. Dates, activities, witnesses. The librarian who'd helped us find books on dinosaurs 3 weeks ago. The park ranger who'd given Emma a junior naturalist badge. The neighbor who'd waved to us planting flowers in my garden. My phone buzzed again. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Patricia, Jordan's mother. I heard what Denise is doing. I'm willing to testify about her history if needed. Call me. I stared at the message, reading it 3 times. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Then I set the phone down. Jordan had asked for time. Involving his mother might push him further away, or trigger exactly the escalation he'd warned about. But I saved the number. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Through the window, I spotted a silver sedan in my driveway I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened. I moved to the door, keeping the chain lock engaged as I opened it a crack. A woman in her 30s stood on my porch, blonde hair pulled back in a tight bun, holding a tablet and wearing a lanyard with a government seal. Behind her, a police cruiser idled at the curb. Mrs. Lewis? I'm Angela Torres from CPS. We spoke on the phone. You said Thursday. My voice came out stronger than I felt. The complaint was filed as urgent. We're required to conduct an immediate welfare check when allegations involve a vulnerable adult caring for a minor. She gestured to the tablet. May I come in? I unhooked the chain, my fingers fumbling with the metal. The door swung open. Angela Torres stepped inside, her eyes already scanning my living room. She moved past me, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She examined the pill bottles lined up on my coffee table, photographing each one with her tablet. Then she noticed Emma's drawing. Her expression remained neutral as she picked it up, studying the three figures holding hands. "When did you last see your granddaughter?" "Sunday. We made cookies." I wrapped my arms around my middle, trying to stop the trembling that had started in my hands and spread to my shoulders. Angela set down the drawing and walked toward my kitchen. I followed, watching as she opened my refrigerator, checked the expiration dates on milk and eggs, examined the cabinets. She pulled out my pill organizer from where I kept it next to the coffee maker. "You use this?" "To keep track. I take my blood pressure medication in the morning, cholesterol at night." She photographed it, then moved to the bathroom. I stood in the doorway as she documented my medicine cabinet, the grab bars I'd installed after my knee surgery last year, the non-slip mat in the tub, every detail captured and filed away. Back in the living room, she finally looked at me directly. "Have you experienced any memory issues, Mrs. Lewis?" "No." "Confusion? Difficulty with daily tasks? Have you forgotten to pick up your granddaughter or gotten lost while driving?" Heat flushed through my chest, spreading up my neck. "Never." "This is retaliation because I questioned my daughter-in-law's behavior." Angela's fingers moved across her tablet screen, typing rapidly. "What behavior?" I retrieved my phone, pulling up the video I'd taken at the birthday party. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it twice. Angela watched the footage, Denise's eyes cold and calculating as she whispered to her friend, the slight smirk when she thought no one was watching. "This doesn't show anything concerning." Angela handed back my phone. "Look at her face. The way she's planning something." "I see a woman having a private conversation." Angela's expression remained professionally blank. "Do you have concrete evidence of abuse or neglect?" The word hung in the air between us. My throat constricted. I thought of Emma's drawing, the penciled words in the corner, the fear in Jordan's eyes when he'd warned me about escalation. "She's isolating Emma, keeping her away from family who love her." Angela made another note. "Has Emma told you she's being mistreated?" "She's 6 years old. She doesn't understand what's happening." More typing. The clicking of Angela's stylus against the tablet screen felt like tiny hammers against my skull. My vision blurred at the edges. I pressed my palm against the wall to steady myself. "Mrs. Lewis, are you all right?" "I'm fine." But my voice sounded distant, hollow. Angela stepped closer, her professional mask slipping slightly into concern. "When's the last time you ate?" I couldn't remember. Yesterday? The morning blurred together with the night before. Time had become elastic since Jordan's visit. "Sit down." Angela guided me to the couch, her grip firm on my elbow. I sank into the cushions, my head dropping forward. Blood rushed in my ears. This was exactly what Denise wanted. Evidence of instability, of an old woman who couldn't take care of herself, let alone a child. I forced myself to straighten, to meet Angela's eyes. "I'm fine. Just stressed." She didn't look convinced, but she returned to her tablet, scrolling through screens. "I'm going to recommend a follow-up evaluation. We'll need documentation from your physician confirming your cognitive function." "When can I see Emma?" "Visits are suspended pending the investigation." The words hit like a physical blow. My chest compressed, making it hard to breathe. I dug my nails into my palms, using the pain to anchor myself. Angela moved toward the door, pausing with her hand on the knob. "One more thing. Do you own any firearms?" "No." She made a final note, then stepped outside. Through the window, I watched her speak with the officer in the cruiser. both of them looking back at my house. My sanctuary had become a crime scene, every detail catalogued as potential evidence of my inadequacy. The cruiser pulled away first, then Angela's sedan. I stood frozen at the window, my reflection staring back at me in the glass. Gray hair escaped from my bun in wild strands. Dark circles shadowed my eyes. I looked exactly like what Denise wanted them to see. A confused old woman losing her grip on reality. Story Block 810. The hospital parking structure loomed before me, 7 stories of concrete and shadows. I'd found the visitor log entry online, public records, legally accessible. Denise had signed in to see Emma yesterday afternoon, room 412, pediatric ward. The system had flagged my visits as suspended, but they couldn't monitor every entrance, every shift change. I pulled into a spot on the 3rd level, hands trembling on the wheel. The engine ticked as it cooled. My phone showed 2:47 a.m. Shift change happened at 3. I'd watched enough medical dramas with Emma to know the patterns, the chaos of nurses clocking out while others arrived. The stairwell door opened with a metallic groan. I climbed, each step sending jolts through my knees. My sneakers squeaked against the painted concrete. At the 4th floor landing, I pressed my ear to the door. Muffled voices drifted through, distant, unhurried. I gripped the handle, counted to 3, and pushed through. The corridor stretched before me, fluorescent lights casting everything in harsh white. A supply cart sat abandoned near the elevator bay. I grabbed a clipboard from its side hook, held it against my chest like armor. 2 nurses passed without glancing my way, deep in conversation about medication schedules. Room 412 stood at the end of the hall, door slightly ajar. Yellow light spilled across the linoleum. I moved closer, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the gap, I saw Emma's small form in the bed, an IV line snaking from her arm to a stand. Her eyes were closed, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. The chair beside her bed held a sleeping figure. Denise, her head tilted back, mouth slightly open. She'd positioned herself like a guard dog, even in rest. I pushed the door wider. The hinges betrayed me with a soft creak. Denise's eyes snapped open. For a heartbeat, we stared at each other. Then she lunged from the chair, placing herself between me and Emma's bed. "Security!" Her voice cracked through the quiet. I stepped inside anyway, letting the door close behind me. "I need to see her." "You violated a court order." Denise's hand shot out, grabbing the call button dangling from Emma's bedrail. I moved fast, faster than I'd moved in years. My fingers closed around her wrist, stopping her thumb an inch from the button. She tried to wrench free, but I held on, muscle memory from decades of physical therapy work giving me the strength. "Let go!" Denise twisted, using her other hand to claw at my forearm. Her nails raked skin. Hot pain bloomed, but I didn't release her. Instead, I pivoted, using her momentum to swing her away from the bed. She stumbled backward, hitting the visitor chair. It scraped across the floor with a harsh screech. Emma stirred in the bed, a soft whimper escaping her lips. Denise recovered quickly, launching herself forward. Her shoulder caught my chest, driving me against the wall. Medical equipment rattled. A plastic water pitcher tumbled from the bedside table, splashing across the floor. I shoved hard, breaking her hold. She grabbed for my hair, fingers tangling in the gray strands that had escaped my bun. Pain seared across my scalp as she yanked. I brought my forearm up, breaking her grip, then caught her chin with my palm, forcing her head back. "Stop!" I hissed. She kneed me in the thigh. My leg buckled. I went down on one knee, the wet floor soaking through my jeans. Denise loomed over me, reaching again for the call button. I swept my leg out, catching her ankle. She crashed down hard, air exploding from her lungs. We grappled on the tile, water soaking our clothes, her perfume mixing with the antiseptic smell of the hospital. She got her hands around my throat, thumbs pressing into my windpipe. Black spots danced across my vision. I brought both fists down on the inside of her elbows, breaking her grip. Then I rolled, pinning her beneath my weight. My knees pressed into her shoulders, holding her flat. "Grandma!" Emma's voice, small and frightened, cut through everything. I looked up to see her sitting in the bed, tears streaming down her face, the IV line pulling taut from her arm. I released Denise immediately, scrambling backward. My lungs heaved, drawing in ragged breaths. Denise rolled to her side, coughing, one hand pressed to her ribs. The door burst open. 2 security guards filled the doorway, radios crackling. Behind them, a nurse rushed toward Emma's bed, checking the IV site, smoothing the blankets. The larger guard approached me, hand outstretched. "Ma'am, you need to come with us." I stood slowly, my body screaming protest. Blood dripped from the scratches on my arm. My shirt had torn at the shoulder. I met Emma's eyes across the room, tried to convey everything I couldn't say. That I loved her, that I'd never stop fighting, that this wasn't over. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. The guard's hand closed around my bicep, firm but not rough. He guided me toward the door. Denise pushed herself upright, mascara smeared under her eyes, hair wild around her face. She looked as broken as I felt, but triumph flickered across her features. "Press charges," she told the guards. Block 910. The security office smelled of burnt coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. I sat in a plastic chair bolted to the floor, fluorescent lights humming overhead. My reflection stared back from the one-way mirror, scratches angry and red across my cheek, my shirt hanging off one shoulder. Blood dried beneath my fingernails. The larger guard stood by the door, arms crossed. His nameplate read, "Morrison." The younger one sat behind the desk, typing my information into an ancient computer terminal. Each keystroke echoed in the cramped space. Morrison's radio crackled. A voice requested backup at the emergency entrance. He adjusted the volume down, but didn't look away from me. My hands trembled in my lap. I pressed them flat against my thighs, willing the shaking to stop. The adrenaline was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Every muscle ached. My throat burned where Denise's thumbs had pressed. The office door opened. A police officer entered, uniform crisp, badge gleaming under the harsh lights. She carried a clipboard and sat down across from me, pen poised. "Mrs. Lewis, I'm Officer Tran. I need to ask you some questions about what happened." I straightened in the chair, wincing as my ribs protested. My granddaughter needed protection. Officer Tran wrote something down. Her pen scratched across the paper, filling the silence. Morrison shifted his weight by the door. The younger guard's typing stopped. "Mrs. Harper says you attacked her unprovoked. She's showing injuries consistent with assault." Officer Tran's eyes lifted from the clipboard, studying my face. "Do you have a different account?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. How could I explain what Denise had done? The months of careful manipulation, the planted evidence, the whispered conversations that made everyone question my memory. Words felt inadequate against the weight of her constructed narrative. Officer Tran waited. Her pen tapped against the clipboard, a steady rhythm that matched my heartbeat. "She's been telling people I'm senile," I said finally. My voice came out hoarse, damaged. "She wants me declared incompetent." The pen scratched again. More notes. Officer Tran's expression remained neutral, professional. She'd heard countless stories in this office, sat across from people in crisis, sorted truth from desperation. The door opened again. A woman in a navy blazer entered, briefcase in hand. Gray streaked through her dark hair, pulled back in a severe bun. She surveyed the room with sharp eyes, then focused on Officer Tran. "I'm Rebecca Stone, Mrs. Lewis's attorney. This interview is over." I stared at her, confusion cutting through my exhaustion. I hadn't called a lawyer, hadn't even been offered a phone call yet. Rebecca set her briefcase on the desk with a decisive click. She extracted a business card, sliding it across to Officer Tran. Then she pulled out a manila folder, documents visible through the transparent top sheet. "My client has been the victim of a sustained campaign of psychological abuse and financial manipulation." Rebecca's voice carried authority, each word precisely chosen. "I have documentation here that may interest you." Officer Tran took the folder, flipping through pages. Her eyebrows rose slightly. Morrison moved closer, reading over her shoulder. Rebecca turned to me, her expression softening marginally. "Your neighbor called me. Patricia Chen?" "She's been documenting everything. The planted pills, the altered calendar, the pharmacy records that don't match what was actually delivered to your home." My chest tightened. Patricia, who I'd barely spoken to since the Christmas party, who I'd assumed believed Denise's stories like everyone else. She'd been watching, gathering evidence, building a case while I'd struggled alone. Officer Tran set the folder down, her fingers drumming against its edge. She looked at me differently now, calculation replacing skepticism. Morrison stepped back, his radio crackling again with distant hospital emergencies. "Mrs. Harper still wants to press charges," Officer Tran said. "Let her." Rebecca pulled out another document, this one stamped with official seals. "I've already filed a restraining order petition on Mrs. Lewis's behalf, and I'll be contacting Adult Protective Services regarding the financial exploitation I've discovered." The words hung in the air. Officer Tran closed her notebook, pen clicking shut. She stood, gathering the folder Rebecca had provided. Morrison opened the door, hospital sounds filtering into the small office. "You're free to go, Mrs. Lewis." Officer Tran paused at the threshold. "But stay away from Mrs. Harper and Emma until this gets sorted out." The command struck like a physical blow. Stay away from Emma, my granddaughter, recovering in a hospital bed upstairs, who'd watched her grandmother and mother fighting on the floor, who'd cried out in fear and confusion. Rebecca's hand settled on my shoulder, firm and steadying. She guided me out of the security office, through corridors that blurred together, toward the parking garage. Her car sat under flickering lights, a sedan with leather seats that creaked as I collapsed into them. She drove in silence, navigating city streets with practiced efficiency. My head rested against the cool window, watching streetlights streak past. The night had fully settled, darkness pressing against the glass. Block 1010. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen arranging fresh flowers in a crystal vase. Sunlight streamed through windows I'd scrubbed clean last week, catching dust motes that danced in golden shafts. The house smelled of lemon polish and brewing coffee, scents that belonged to a life I'd rebuilt piece by careful piece. My hands moved steadily as I trimmed rose stems, snipping at precise angles the way my mother had taught me decades ago. No tremor, no hesitation. The medical records Rebecca had fought for sat filed away upstairs, proof that my occasional memory lapses stemmed from medication interactions, not dementia. 3 different specialists had confirmed it in writing. The doorbell chimed. I set down the scissors and walked to the entrance, smoothing my blouse. Through the frosted glass, I could make out a small figure shifting from foot to foot. Emma stood on my porch holding a wrapped package, her mother beside her. My son's ex-wife looked thinner than I remembered, shoulders hunched inside a cardigan despite the warm morning. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "Hello." I kept my voice neutral, hand resting on the doorframe. "Grandma." Emma thrust the package forward. "I made this in art class." I accepted the gift, fingers brushing the careful tape job at the corners. Emma bounced on her toes, braids swinging. Behind her, Denise cleared her throat. "The restraining order expired last week," she said quietly. "And Emma misses you." The words cost her something. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, how her gaze dropped to the porch boards. 6 months of court battles and family therapy sessions and supervised visits at neutral locations. 6 months of Emma's drawings arriving in the mail, her careful handwriting spelling out, "I love you, Grandma." I stepped back, opening the door wider. Emma darted inside, heading straight for the living room where she knew I kept art supplies. Her footsteps thundered overhead moments later. She'd found the guest room I'd prepared, just in case. Denise remained on the threshold, arms crossed protectively over her chest. The morning light showed every line of exhaustion on her face. Every sleepless night since that hospital confrontation. She'd been ordered into therapy herself as part of the settlement. The documents Rebecca had uncovered, forged powers of attorney, attempted financial transfers, had nearly resulted in criminal charges. "The coffee's fresh," I said, gesturing toward the kitchen. She followed slowly, perching on a bar stool while I poured 2 mugs. Steam curled between us, carrying the rich aroma of the dark roast I preferred. I slid sugar and cream across the counter, remembering how she took it. "My lawyer said you could have pressed charges." Denise wrapped both hands around the mug. "The fraud, the false accusations?" "I could have." I sipped my own coffee, letting the heat ground me. "But Emma's already been through enough." Upstairs, my granddaughter sang off key, some pop song from the radio. The sound filled spaces that had been too quiet for too long. Denise's eyes glistened, moisture gathering at the corners. "I was scared," she whispered. "When Richard left, when everything fell apart, I thought if I could just control something, manage something." Her voice cracked. "I convinced myself you were declining, that I was protecting Emma." The admission hung between us. I set down my mug, studying the woman who'd tried to have me declared incompetent. 6 months ago, rage would have consumed me. Now I saw only someone drowning, grasping at whatever floated past. "You need to keep seeing your therapist." She nodded, wiping her eyes roughly. "Twice a week. And I'm on medication now, for the anxiety." Emma thundered down the stairs, clutching a sketch pad and markers. She spread them across my dining table, immediately beginning a drawing with fierce concentration. Her tongue poked out slightly as she worked, the same expression my son had worn at her age. I moved to stand behind her, watching colors bloom across white paper. She was drawing the 3 of us. Stick figures holding hands in front of a house. Flowers dotted the yard in wild profusion. A sun smiled from the corner, cartoonish and bright. My hand settled on her shoulder, feeling the warmth of her through the thin t-shirt. She leaned back against me, still drawing, adding a dog that we didn't have, but she'd always wanted. Denise watched from the kitchen, coffee mug cradled against her chest. The distance between us remained vast, a canyon carved by betrayal and false accusations and public humiliation. But Emma's laughter bridged some of that space, her innocent joy creating neutral ground where we could all stand. "You can visit on Saturdays," I said, meeting Denise's gaze. "Supervised at first. We'll see how it goes." She nodded again, setting down the empty mug. Thank you, she whispered, the words barely audible. After they left, Emma skipping down the sidewalk while Denise followed more slowly, I returned to my flowers. The roses stood crisp and vibrant in their vase, petals unfurling toward the light. I carried them to the dining table, placing them beside Emma's drawing. My phone buzzed, a text from Rebecca checking in as she did every few days. I typed back quickly, confirming our lunch plans for next week. She'd become more than my lawyer. A friend, forged in the fire of crisis. The afternoon stretched ahead, empty but mine. I settled onto the couch with a book I'd been meaning to read, one of the historical novels I'd always loved. The pages turned smoothly under my fingers. My mind tracked the plot easily, remembering details and connections. Outside my window, neighbors walked past with dogs and children. Cars hummed along the street. Life continued in its ordinary patterns, beautiful in its mundane regularity. I was here, present, capable, myself, and that was enough. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.